All right. Well, as I film this intro, I look up at the clock and it's 9:15. It's Saturday night, the night before this video is coming out. And I was uploading all my footage from the project here into my computer, into my editing software, and I realized that I didn't do an intro. So here I am at 9 o'clock at night out here on Saturday, barefoot in the shop, videoing, filming this intro for this video. What this video is all about, it's a torque converter. I'm going to be assembling the torque converter for a Cat 735. It's a 6-wheel drive, 35-ton articulated dump truck or rock truck. I did a video, well, 2 videos before on these transmissions. One was taking the torque converter apart, one was taking the transmission apart. Those were a different truck, a different transmission. That was for a customer's transmission. That's already been assembled and it's already put back in this truck and it's out running. I didn't bother assembling that. I didn't bother videoing that one when I reassembled it because I had to hurry up and get it done for the customer, and doing the video slows me way down when I put these things back together. And that one was such a mess. It took so much work to get that one back together. That thing was just destroyed when it showed up here. So this one here, I actually bought 2 transmissions for parts, and one of them I was gonna rebuild for a spare, which I did, and the other one I was gonna rebuild and sell. And well, before I got a chance to do that, I rebuilt that last transmission, and there were a lot of parts in there that I couldn't get, just not even available anywhere, new or used. So I ended up cannibalizing this transmission here, and that's where this torque converter and this pump drive unit came from. My old torque converter is laying right here. My old pump drive's laying here, part of the transmission. All the rest of the transmission's over here, and that one's got a lot of hours. It's probably around 27,000 hours on it. This one here that I bought for parts is about 800, so it's real low hour. So I took this one apart in the last video. You guys saw me take it apart, or actually, I'm sorry, I didn't do it. So this one here, I took it apart, and in this video, I put it back together, and I go through, I put a new lockup clutch in it and some new seals and stuff, and then reassemble it. And then the next video, I'm going to do that to the transmission. I'm going to reassemble this transmission with some of the parts from my old one, and then we'll assemble that and put it on the torque converter here. So for now, we're just going to do the torque converter in this video. Look out in the future for the one on the transmission. Should be pretty interesting. And let's get to it. All right, so I've got the pump housing standing up vertically here. I had to clean it out a little bit, and then I pulled the oil pump off just so that I can check inside, you know, make sure it's all good. And it is, it's beautiful inside. So I've got it all back together. Got the bolts torqued down here. The Allen bolts here to hold the gear on. I always clean those with starting fluid inside the holes and the bolts and put Loctite on them. I noticed this one didn't, and I don't think they actually do that from the factory or whatever, but that's what I do to them. And then you always have to make sure you get this gear on correctly, because I've seen someone put one on backwards once, and it really wreaked havoc on things inside here. It actually ate into this plate and then filled everything up with steel, ruined all the discs, bearings, everything. So here, this is where it goes inside the pump drive. This one here has an O-ring here where it mounts on the pressure side of it. This is the suction side. It actually gets this suction tube. Some didn't. I don't know the difference. I thought the early ones did and the newer ones didn't, but this is a later case and it does have the O-ring. So for some reason, some do and some don't. So I've got probably 10 of them in the box over there, because whenever I order the seals for these things, I always just go through and order all the seals, and more than likely they don't have that seal. So I just went over and grabbed that. I'm going to go ahead and stick this pump in. We'll bolt it on, and then we can put new seals on the suction pipe, and then we'll be able to lay this back down so I can put the pump drive gears in it. All right, so now I just have to put a bolt in here, torque those down, and then I can get the suction tube in here. Okay, so I've got new seals on the suction tube. I've got it bolted up. I've got everything kind of wiped down, cleaned up here. So this area here actually slides over the seals on the torque converter. Actually, this seal's on there, I believe. Yeah, and then here's the oil ports that flow through here from the pump. And then that's how oil gets into the torque converters, through the ports on here. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and flip this over now, and I could reinstall these pump drive gears, and then we'll start putting the torque converter itself together. Okay, so I've got this housing ready to go. I did not bother filming when I put the gears back in. because there was nothing to really film on that. So this is ready to go pretty much. I still have a little cleanup to do as we go, but it's just removing these O-rings and stuff, and I'll reseal this fitting and stuff. But so next up for this torque converter, this is the flywheel, and this is where the starter engages. It's kind of weird. This machine has a flex plate. It doesn't have a full flywheel like you would expect a real tractor to have. But this is also part of the torque converter. The lockup clutch, the piston for the lockup clutch goes in here. It engages these teeth, and then the lockup clutch goes in here, and then the torque converter builds off of it. So I've got this bearing. I'm going to replace this bearing here, and then we'll be able to just lay this flat on the front. This is the outside of it. It's kind of dirty and scummy looking, but it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't want to be too dirty, but it doesn't. This isn't inside the transmission. When you bolt this trans to the engine, these bolts here are where the flex plate bolt into it, and it's a dry torque, or it's a dry bell housing. And then, but there's a cover that goes over here with a centering thing on it that goes into a hole in the flex, or I guess into an adapter that's bolted on the back of the crank. And it helps hold the center, and that also seals everything. So we got the O-ring here. So we are gonna go ahead and get this bearing out. I'll lay it down upside down, put the new bearing in, and then we'll be able to flip it over onto the dry side, is what we call the other side of this, and then we can start building the torque converter off of this. All right, there we go. That was a hard bearing to get out. It recesses so far in here, it's really hard to get a punch or anything on there. So here's what's left of the bearing after me knocking it out. Got all this slingshot material now. Get this nylon cage, and then here's the bearing. All right, so I've got this cleaned out. Here's the new bearing. I just took it out of the box. And one thing I want to show you guys, that's what I wanted to show you. This center race inside, it's a two-piece race, and you have to assemble it. It gets assembled as you assemble the torque converter itself. You'll see it later on, but I'll put these aside, and then this is the part the bearing that we're going to drive in. All right, so we're going to lay this one on there. Start tapping to get it started straight. If I screw it up, it's only a $300 bearing, so no big deal. That hurt my ears. All right, I gotta see if that's seated all the way. Actually, it is. It's seated all the way down. So you can tell the difference when you're driving it just by the sound. I don't know if the camera picks it up, but you hear that sharp sound as opposed to like a dull sound. That means that she's home. All right, so I've got it flipped over. First thing we do is we're gonna put a new piston seal in here. So get the piston seal in this groove right in here. And then you can see here's the piston. It's got a seal on the other side of the piston. The seal I'm about to put in rides on the ID of it, the inboard side. And then there's this nylon, or whatever this stuff is, seal on there. All right, let's get the seal in. All right, that went in there real nice. And then next we'll pull up this piston, and then this is how this goes in. So this is the piston. When the lockup clutch tells it to go into lockup mode, oil goes on the other side of this piston and forces it to clamp onto, to clamp the disc and clamp the disc in there to give you lockup. All right, there we go. That's set in place. All right, so here's the new disc. If it wasn't a new disc, we wouldn't have to soak it in oil, but since it's a new disc, I will soak it. And by the time this thing goes to run again, it's going to be permeated in there really well. All right, so just going to put a nice thick coat of oil on the bottom, and then we'll lay the disc in here, move it around a little bit, and then we'll soak the top. right, there we go. So now what sucks about this transmission, or this torque, how it goes together, so this thing's just free floating. There's nothing that holds it in place, that indexes it like a center hub that's gonna be able to hold it in place while I assemble. So the next thing that's gonna go on is this ring right here. And I just put an O-ring on it, I put it in place, bolt it down, and then when I go to set the hub in the middle here, these spline right here on this spring-loaded shock absorbing adapter thing, it's going to go into here, and you have to be very careful to make sure that you get it engaged in these, because you could assemble this whole thing and have it not, the spline not engaged, and you're going to destroy it when you go to run the truck. So you just, when you put it in there, and I'll show you this later in the video, you have to really move it around and feel it, and then you're going to feel it drop into the spline, and then you'll know it's good. Then you can continue building the torque above that. All right, so I've got this cleaned up. The outside of it has surface rust on it, which is not a big deal because that's on the dry side. It's not going to affect anything. I've got all the internal stuff cleaned up really well, and now I've got my new O-ring. I'm going to go ahead and grease the O-ring, snap it on there, and then we'll set this in place and then bolt it down, and then torque it to the specified torque specification. And don't ask me what the torque spec is because I have no idea. All right, I'll leave the camera over there. I'll set this on here, and this goes on anyway. It doesn't have to index a certain way. You can line up the pusher bolt holes if you want. Just, you have a 50-50 chance of getting it exactly how it was before you took it off, but it doesn't matter. So I'll get all the bolts. It takes these 16mm head bolts. Like 24 of them or something like that, and they'll pull it down. They'll pull down the O-ring into there. It takes a little bit of force to push that down in there. Like, I won't push it in. I'll just pull it gently side to side with the impact to get it into place. And then once that's tightened down, I'll center this clutch disc as much as I can. You can kind of eyeball it, get as close as you can. Okay, so I've got the housing in place. I ran it down with the impact and I torqued it to 44 foot-pounds. It's like 44 plus or minus 5, I think is what it is. Next, I'm going to clean up the turbine and the coupling, and I'm going to go and look. This is actually upside down. I just kind of stacked this up here so that the coupling will go down first, and that's what engages the lockup clutch disc, and then the turbine will be up on here, and then the stator is going to sit inside of that once we get that into place. Okay, so I've got the coupling and it's made it to the turbine. I've got those set in place. If you look inside here, I don't think the camera's going to pick it up, but you can see the edge of the turbine here, and it's above like a flat spot that's inside of this adapter. And what I'm going to have to do is kind of pick up on this thing and kind of jiggle it and kind of move it in increments and try to set it down, and I've got to get it to mesh that lockup clutch disc. And once I do, then I'll be able to tell, because this thing's going to be low enough in there. So when you have to pick it up this way, because you can't get your fingers around the outside here, because then they'll get pinched in there. Oh, I got that one in easy. So I kind of centered that disc as good as I could. But now if I look inside here, there's almost like a flat spot inside of this housing here. And so I've got that in there, and now she's riding on the disc. And if I spin it, I can feel the resistance of the disc in there spinning. And then so now that that's in there, I need to take and get this bearing in here. So first you put this retainer, and then you put the bearing race. Let me get this. And lay that in there. Make sure the retainer's in its spot. Some transmissions have a notch where that thing's got to lock into a notch. This one doesn't. And then you got the race. Then you put the bearing. And then next we're going to take and put the stator in there. And this has oil all over it, which is fine. It's clean. This transmission, like I said, it wasn't a failure. It was a very low hour takeout. And then so I'm going to lay that in there. I have to back up and double check and show you guys. So here's the race that's on there, and there's a snap ring holding the race on here. And inside here, I'm not going to go into it because this one's new. It doesn't matter. But there's a one-way rotator inside here, and it's got these little balls and springs that go behind there. And so it makes it so this shaft, this inside here, can only turn one direction. And normally on a full rebuild, if this thing was an old takeout, was a used one, or whatever, getting a full rebuild, I would take that apart and I'd replace the springs in there and make sure it's all set right. But this one, I'm just gonna set it back in here because this, like I said, this was a very low hour, very, very clean, and it was a brand new transmission. It had never been rebuilt before. It was a brand new from factory and low hour. Okay, now that the stator is in there, I'll make sure it spins okay. Now before I do assemble this, or when it is assembled completely, I'll be able to test this to see if the one-way sprag's working correctly. I really don't want to waste the time to take it apart for you guys. If it was the one I took out of that transmission, I would definitely be taking it apart and going through that, but I know what this is. The only reason I did put a new bearing in the flywheel is because this flywheel is from the old transmission, and that bearing had some wear, had a lot of hours on it, and I couldn't take the one out of the flywheel that was on this transmission that I'm using all these parts from. I don't know if all that makes sense, but I just want to clarify that. Okay, so now this already has the race inside there. So now what we need to do is we lay a bearing on it, we lay a race on it, and we lay a retainer on it. It'll kind of goes together in this little package, kind of. And that's just, we just center that up on there. So then we're just going to take the impeller, we're going to clean it up. I'm going to put a new O-ring on it, get just any of the stuff off here, get the oil out of there, and then we'll take that, and then that's going to go on top, and we're going to bolt it down and seal up this torque converter. All right, so I've got this impeller wiped down, got the oil wiped off of it, mostly. I got the old O-ring off, I'm just getting a new O-ring on it now. Got it greased up good. And we're gonna lay this on top of the housing. Then we get this kind of sealed up. Tap that down with. There we go. Yeah, we'll work that down. Sitting on the O-ring all the way around, and then I'll go ahead and put all these bolts in and run them down, and then we'll torque them with the torque wrench. All right, we've got the whole torque unit put together. I've got it torqued down. This part's like all sealed up now. Now we just need to put this manifold in. This is the oil manifold. But the oil's going to actually flow through it to get into the torque converter to do whatever it's going to do, for the oil to flow through it. The bearing on it's good, all that's good. I've checked the hard seals, they're good. I'm just going to put a new O-ring on it, and I'm going to go and put this manifold in and put this shaft in, and then we'll be able to set. Well, then we'll put a new seals on it, on that spacer, not the spacer plate, but that divider plate. We'll set that on here, and then we'll be able to pick up the gear drive housing and set it on top of the torque converter. All right, we'll get that O-ring greased. Get a little bit of grease on this hard seal. All right, that's in place. And then we've also got this race right here on top of the manifold. And then there's a bearing that goes right here. And then another race that goes right there against that gear. And then we have these other hard seals in here, these 3 hard seals. I checked all those when I took it apart. This stuff's like brand new inside here. So no reason to throw good parts in the trash. There we go. And we make sure everything rotates good. The shaft rotates, the manifold rotates. All right, so once you have the manifold in and you have the shaft in, then you need to flip the whole torque converter on its side. I always just put a link bracket on it right there and put a rag through the link bracket, just pull up on it and then just lay it on its side. And then if you see the other end here, with that bearing that goes inside of the torque converter here, this is what, it comes with these 2 races like that. This is the old race. The other race is in there already on the shaft. And then this one here, once you lay it on its side, you want to put it in place. It goes right here into the bearing. I have the new one in already. I just tap it in with a dead blow and just seat it right into place. This plate and this spring are going to go on there. So this is actually a spring right here. It says on there, this side out, right there on the bottom. And then here's the retainer that holds it in. You can see the step, that beveled edge and that step go towards the spring. And then you've got these 3 bolts, and they're going to go into the end of that shaft. And once you get, run these in by hand, and then make sure everything lines up flat like that, so it's in the groove of that spring. Make sure the spring's, you know, the right way out. And then you're going to want to torque these to 22.4 foot-pounds. And what I do is I get these big channel locks, and I'll just clamp them right here on the gear here. The gear is really hard. I've never damaged a gear before by holding it with the channel locks. And then you can hold the shaft, you know, with the channel locks where you're turning the torque wrench on it. And then once you get those torqued, then you're going to put the O-ring in here, and then this cover is going to go back on right here. And this cover can only go on one way. The bolts are set up so it can't go on wrong. Because if you notice, you have these holes here for oil flow, and you're going to have these notches here that have to line up in those, you know, with those notches in here. And it only goes on one way. So start by lining it up with the holes, or with those notches. And if the holes don't line up, then just keep rotating this till all this, what is it, 7 holes, I think? 6 holes, till all 6 holes line up, and then that's the right spot. This can't go on wrong. The transmission oil pump gear. It's kind of hard to do here at the camera, so. Come on, baby. I can feel it dragging on the gear as I turn it. There we go. Okay, there we go. So you can see I got the holes pretty close to being lined up. I can just stick my bar in there and straighten that out. And then there's a handful of Allen head bolts that go in there to tighten it down. And that's what bolts this housing onto the torque converter. That's what holds it onto the torque itself. And then as far as that separator plate, we have these bolts here. There's 4 of those, and those will go into holes here on the side. And when we run those in, those are going to hold the plate in place where the plate goes. So let me go ahead and just get this bolted down, and then we'll finish up this video. Okay, so I've got all these separator plate bolts in. They were a little bit of a pain because you have to pry up on that separator plate sometimes. Sometimes it goes right in. This one was a pain in the butt. But it's really cool when you go to tighten these up to make this, makes a certain sound when you tighten these up when it smacks that plate into place. I guess you couldn't hear it. It didn't make it this time. It's a cool sound, trust me. Okay, so that's it for this torque converter. Next up, in the next video, I'll rebuild clutch pack number 1, which mounts on top of the torque housing right here. It goes right over on here. And then I'll reassemble the rest of this transmission. I'll get all these other torque converter parts out of here, the old ones, kind of clean this all up so it's a lot more room for me to work here. And that'll be another video. So anyways, thanks for watching. Please hit the like button if you liked it, I guess. Hit the subscribe button, and please share the video with a friend. And thank you guys for watching.